This podcast is brought to you by Outlaw World. Use promo code ChattyShow, that's ChattyShow, for 10% off any merch you get on Outlaw World. Hip hop and fashion. Right, this podcast is with Rob Taylor. Rob Taylor is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has his own academy in Cardiff here. You join us in the podcast where Rob is on about the academies that are in Wales, as I ask him briefly how many academies that they are. I hope you guys enjoy. Jiu-Jitsu coach Rob Taylor. He's got an academy down in Cardiff, Rob Taylor Jiu-Jitsu Academy. He trains many people in what is one of the most impressive forms of combat and martial arts I've ever taken part of. And he trains a MMA fighter in Lulong who's currently signed to Bellator. And Rob has competed on many occasions as well and had great success. So I enjoyed with Rob. Thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. Happy to be here.
So just wanted to, one thing I've always wanted to kind of ask you is Jiu-Jitsu is something that's still quite relatively new in the UK. So, it's not probably one of the most highlighted martial arts in the UK anyway. So I was just wondering, when you were growing up, how did you get into it, and what was it like in terms of accessibility here in perhaps the UK or in Wales in general? Because I believe it's only 3 or 4 Jiu-Jitsu academies in Wales or in South Wales. Is that correct?
Oh, well, there's a lot more than that now. I mean, when I started fairly old, I guess I was 25, I think 25, 20, 24, 25. When I started, there was only one Jiu-Jitsu academy in Wales, in Swansea. I think there were maybe a few other guys who sort of trained a little bit and taught a little bit, but not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's another guy, Tulare Combat, Richard Shaw. I don't think he was sort of teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time, but he was definitely teaching like a form of Jiu-Jitsu. But that was it. But now there's a lot more. I think there's probably about 15 academies, if I had to guess, going through them in Wales. But I mean, it's grown a lot, just in that time, that 15, 16 years I've been training. Because not long after I started, were the first ever British-born black belts were awarded.
That's impressive.
And now there's, I don't know, I would imagine there's probably 200 plus, maybe 300.
So, I mean, that just kind of shows the quick growth that the martial artists had over in the UK. And I think, does that come, do you think that a lot of that comes with the rise of MMA and in particular the UFC? And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. The biggest growth I've seen since I've been doing it was Ultimate Fighter 1 with Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin.
Yes.
And then a little bit with Michael Bisping's rise, and then a lot of increase in popularity with Conor McGregor.
Yeah, definitely. I mean that's how I purely found MMA, was through John Jones and Conor McGregor. It was around that time. But I mean, going back into it, yeah, you could definitely see the rise when Ultimate Fighter 1 series happened, which was massive for the company, and it's just kind of highlighted how cool Jiu-Jitsu is as well. I think that was the one thing that surprised me when taking part with you in the first time, was I was very, very concerned at how technical it was going to be. Obviously, you were going to show us just the basics and stuff, but still kind of doing them. But I think it's a credit to you as well as an instructor how sort of simple you made it not only look, but when you explained it down. So I think you've allowed myself and many others to get like that full jiu-jitsu experience in a sense, and really be able to go at it, train it, and enjoy it. And I'm sure you've had people from those MMA events that you've helped do join your gym as well, so which is only an increase in interest and popularity. But it's one of those sports that things I've competed in that has been really fun, because it's a lot of learning, whether you do well or you find yourself in a submission or a guard. I think it's one of those things that you're always constantly learning, no matter what level. So I've always been intrigued in that, and I guess there are other sports that you can kind of take part in and always learn, but never to the full extent of what martial arts and in particular jiu-jitsu will give you. There's always something else you can go on to and advance. Is that where you found a lot of enjoyment in it as well? And
Yeah, I mean, I think jiu-jitsu's got it's got a really good combination, sort of the aspects to it, because it's obviously just physical activity, so it keeps you fit. But yeah, it's definitely got a sort of creative element to it, in that much like any subject, you've got mastery of the basics, which never stops. You're always refining and improving the understanding of the sort of fundamental ideas in jiu-jitsu. But then there's always new stuff, which it's not totally new. There's not going to be anything that's like completely, no one's ever seen anything crazy like this before. But there's always little adaptations that you can make, changes to your own style. So I've been doing it now, coming up to 16, or just gone over 16 years. And I still find new things, new interests within jiu-jitsu. I haven't got bored at any point. It's still fun. And I think it adds a lot. Also, the help that it gives to your sort of mental side of things, like increasing confidence, and stuff like that, where I think things like that you can develop, and sort of the ideas you can get from jiu-jitsu, away from the physical, the sort of like you say, no matter what level you are, you can get something out of it, because when you turn up and you don't know anything, and anyone with a bit of experience can beat you up, basically, that gives you that humbleness, and then as you advance and you get better, you sort of see that humbleness from a different side, and that you're the, especially as a black belt coach, I'm the dominant one now in most of the time when I'm rolling with my students. So you get that humbleness where, look, I don't need to prove myself, I've already done that. So yeah, it's constantly entertaining. It keeps me happy.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of kind of any with jiu-jitsu as well, like guys I've seen, just kind of watching the sessions beforehand when we train, or just seeing how you are with the people that join your gym. There is a great social atmosphere to it as well. It's always been fantastic, full of people just willing to work hard, and also on top of that enjoying it and having a good laugh. And I think that just instills a real cool atmosphere in there as well. Whereas I've been to boxing gyms prior to that, and it always seems to be a little intense. Like there's people going in with an ego, or like you're feeling like they're above everybody else. And when you go in sparring, you're trying to do a bit more than what sparring's designed for. Whereas I find when people are rolling, you genuinely tend to just, as you say, to if there's someone a bit more slightly more experienced, he's trying to just give that lesson to the newbie, or someone that's slightly less experienced and whatnot, and then obviously preparing for tournaments, etc. But yeah, I find that there is no real ego in that atmosphere of the jiu-jitsu gym, and I've seen it when you've handed people their belts. Like everybody is happy for each other, and it's a great moment for you, I'm sure, as a coach, to see people excel in jiu-jitsu as well, which I think is great. So I think that has a uniqueness in it as well. Whereas I found in other combat sport gyms, or in other sports, it always seems to be one or two individuals that come in with that little ego, which is okay in those sports, I guess, to a degree. But I find jiu-jitsu has a great element of, as you say, humbleness, and you know, kind of the true philosophy of wanting to work hard and get better, but not be sort of a knob, or to say.
Yeah, I think you do still get some bad sort of ego stuff in jiu-jitsu as well. I try and make sure there's none of that in my academy, but you definitely see, you do definitely see some. Um, and like you said, I think somewhat you do need a little bit of that in sport. I think people always think that they hear the word ego and they just think that you're talking about something bad, but you need to have a sense of pride in yourself, and a sense of sort of happiness in your achievements, a confidence, and that's all a part of ego as well. But then, I know what you're alluding to is obviously what you don't want, especially in these jiu-jitsu, martial arts, combat sports, anything like that, is you don't want the people who become good and then use that to bully others.
Yeah,
And I certainly think in jiu-jitsu generally that's quite well avoided. And I think part of that is because everything needs a partner. You can't, it's very, very hard to train any sort of jiu-jitsu on your own. Whereas with a lot of other things, that's not necessarily the case. I guess judo is the same as that. You need a partner to train properly. But yeah, I think mainly jiu-jitsu sort of keeps people fairly humble. I think not everybody, same as anything. Nothing applies
yeah,
equally to everybody, but in general, it does give you a sense of humbleness, because for starters, when you start, pretty much everyone's going to beat you up. Yeah, but they do it in a nice way. You realize, I got no chance against this person, but they're not really doing anything particularly bad to me. I just can't escape. I'm just completely
Yeah.
trapped. Whereas obviously it's a bit harder to do that sometimes in boxing, because I know a few friends of mine have said they've had times where they've got someone that joins up and they're very eager and they're sparring and they just come forward throwing bombs, and they kind of say, like, what am I meant to do against that? Because you can try and take it easy, but if they catch you with one, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got to give them a little dig, but then I guess some people go a bit too far with that as well.
Yeah, I guess you kind of tap in on that other side of, where does the line draw sort of with sparring? I guess if someone's throwing at you, I guess you just got to kind of bring them back down to a sort of thing. But I just found, and I guess it is a credit to you then, because I didn't feel like anybody that attends your academy had that kind of ego on them. And as you say, you try to eliminate that sort of bad, but the bad ego is what I mean. Not
Yeah,
completely, insecure and no, don't say I'm good, or I won't say I'm good about that.
yeah,
But yeah, I think genuinely you create a great atmosphere, which I think also reflects on the people like myself who did the MMA came in rather comfortable, wasn't very intimidated. And as you say, like training with someone who's better than you, like rolling with you or Tom, etc. Anybody that's kind of stayed behind to help us, it's always been kind of rather rewarding if you can even just do one thing, like it would just kind of dictate that one thing or see where they take you with that. I found that that's always been beneficial, and yeah, I never come away rolling with someone better than me thinking, oh gosh, I fuck this, or yeah, I've got to get him back, etc. And it gets a bit sly and nasty. It's always kind of beneficial, and I like,
yeah,
I really enjoy that. I've always been someone that kind of enjoys learning off someone who will give you a true lesson, like in sport, in rugby, for example. Like that's the game I've played the most. Like if someone's tackled me and hit me really hard, or has pulled something off, I'm not usually in a mindset that's bitter or horrible. It's, oh wow, fair play. Next time you try and do that. It's a healthy competition in that sense. And I just kind of learned really through MMA and through your gym as well that there's a way to be with people in sport. And I guess before I did that, I was very much what I'm sort of talking against now. I used to kind of be very personal. Used to try and always get one over, like with a harsh tackle. Try to essentially humiliate someone in training. Which now looking on it, it's just such a ridiculous move. Like I feel. I guess that just comes with maturity as well. But
yeah.
you,
I think a part of it, and I think there's a difference in there, because it's the easy thing, isn't it? It's the easy thing to, like, if someone, like you say, if someone does something to you, it's a much easier way is to try and get back at them. It's like a short-term thing.
yeah,
Um, Whereas I think it's much better. I always try and, like with the jiu-jitsu training, I always try and give people this idea that you're always better off, not just in jiu-jitsu, this is in anything, is to try and build up everyone around you. Because then that brings you up. Because it's, say you want to be a competitor in jiu-jitsu, there's no point in just trashing all of your teammates all the time and just wrecking them, because what you should be doing is trying to help them, trying to show them every single way of shutting down everything you do. You should be teaching them, trying to make them as good as possible, because the better they are, then the better you become. And I think that's true in general. Like, you always want an atmosphere around you where everybody is supporting everybody. If you do make a mistake, go away, ask the person, why did this happen? Why did this go like this? Why did you do this to me? Rather than sort of just seeing the negative and thinking about, like, what's a way that I can sort of even things out. You don't want to even things out. You want to just improve yourself.
yeah. I think, yeah, just kind of that focus goes away from what you actually want to get, and it becomes about what you'd like to do to them, and that's ultimately just not productive in training in anything. So I just found that a lot of training with yourself and Tom has given me a lot of things after fighting and
Mm-hmm.
during this pandemic to really work on and think about, and it's been really beneficial. So I just wanted to kind of tap in to you as well. Obviously, we own the academy and stuff. And what was it like? What's it been like with the gym through this pandemic? I know personally that it's been quite frustrating for you, as you have tapped on some very good and fair points about why your gym should be open during these difficult times. But what was it like for you at the first lockdown to now, essentially?
Um, yeah, well, it's been a lot of stress, because whereas, it's looking things are looking okay financially now. I've always been quite careful with the finances, but at first, when we were told we had to shut, it was a long delay before they announced what sort of support there would be for businesses. And I still had to pay all my bills in that time. Um, just not being able to do what I love doing is the worst part about it.
Mm,
And I think, as you see me posting, that's been some of my frustrations, is that a lot of, like, I'm quite happy to accept that we live in a big society, we're all mixed together, and that means that we do have to make sacrifices, and we have to try and, prevent a disease from spreading. But then it's frustrating when the stuff that you see put out, like I seen an advert recently about telling someone, can you look them in the eyes and tell them you can't work
oh,
from
it's
home? I think,
ridiculous,
well,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I can, because I simply can't work from home. And I just think that stuff like that, it just shows the short-sightedness of when people are putting adverts like that out, because there's always going to be someone that's an exception to everything.
Hmm.
Um, and then lots of, again, you've seen there's been a lot of things that just frustrate me, where we're told protect the NHS. Fine, I love the NHS. I think it definitely needs to be successful and keep it going. But then, why aren't we being told that about how much the health impacts of being overweight have been for people on COVID, with COVID? Why were people so desperate for alcohol to be allowed to be sold in the first lockdown? Why were fast food restaurants open before gyms and before fitness studios and things like that? It just blows my mind. But what can I do about it?
Well, no, well, I mean, you're spot on, really. I mean, the idea that, I think it's been quite frustrating for a lot of people, and myself, is that, in particular with Mark Drakeford, he, mentioned 3 weeks ago about gyms being the first thing to open up, and there's just not been a peep since. And I thought, got credit to, Drakeford. He's clearly seen or acknowledged that, you know gyms need to be open during this time, and instead it's just kind of been blown under the water. And I find that the policies in place that you can't travel to exercise, and you can't maybe go, you know, out your door, really, to train, are kind of dead against you going outside, really, unless it's local. Um,
Yeah,
which
I
I
think as well, when they impose restrictions, and they seem as a bit overbearing to me, I think sometimes then that makes people more likely to just ignore it totally.
Yeah,
Because I just think, what would be the danger if we were to meet up in a park somewhere, and you just train, just run, do press ups with each other or whatever, stay 2 meters apart. How is that more dangerous than some of the, where you see people queuing up outside shops and stuff where no one's 2 meters apart?
no.
You're going Tesco, no one's 2 meters apart. So how is it? How would that be more dangerous that me, you, 8 other people meet up in a park and exercise and train together to give each other positive feedback? Like I think that's the thing, that some of these restrictions, because they've said, right, you cannot go out at all, you can't meet anybody else, it makes people kind of think, oh well, this is stupid, so I am going to go over my mate's house.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing as well, that you're literally putting sort of unnecessary challenges in the way on top of what is already a difficult time. There are a lot of things you can kind of say, okay, fair enough, I do understand to a degree, but in terms of your mental health and physical health, I feel like they should be the priority. And it just kind of shows where this government in particular are at. It's not about, making sure that myself and you and the other people that do want to train are okay, and get away, get out of the house for about an hour or half an hour, and just be able to train, and you know get the benefits from your health, from exercising for health and mind. And I think I've struggled with that, in the sense of, I jog home most of the time from work, and it's a great feeling. But kind of looking back on it as well, it would just be quite nice to, after a day at work, where, you get to go to the gym for an hour and just kind of train. And it's that little bit of normality that could
Mhm.
probably get a lot of people over the line as well. I think you're talking about mental health issues. I think, I think a lot of it is going to come down from the lack of exercising, or definitely from lack of exercising, but also a lack of being able to get out the house. I think seeing the same four walls every day is difficult, and I just think people need to cut themselves some slack a little bit and say, go, go out. I know they're only recommending an hour, but like, what's to stop you from going out for an extra half an hour or an hour if you need that, and if it makes your day slightly better, I'd
Yeah,
say go for it, because it's no different, as you say, to going inside a shopping centre and going
yeah,
shopping for the day, which a lot of people do, and you're not
uh,
2 meters away. You're touching things that you don't know who's been touching beforehand as well. So
yeah. And how does it have any sense? You know, to me, I just think, how is there any sense in limiting the amount of time that you should go outside to exercise? What?
who's counting is
How
what
is
I
it?
want to know.
Yeah, like how is it more dangerous if you go and do 6 hours of exercise rather than 1 hour?
Hmm. What's the risk? And
Yeah,
if you would be on your own as well, there would be no difference. So
yeah, I don't. Yeah, but like I say, I think it's just like a lot of stuff in government. I think some stuff ends up getting rushed through. I think a lot of the time, uh, it's being sort of decided by people who don't really have what I would consider a normal life. Certainly, the current government in Westminster, you know, they haven't had like what anyone would consider a normal
yeah,
upbringing. Most of them went to private school. Most of them are from families who are millionaires and stuff. And those people, you know, how do those new people know how like our lives work? They got no idea.
no. And, it's not to say that I'd blame them for it, but then it's not to say that they should be making the decisions they're making, because they're clearly not seeing the impact that, businesses and local businesses are having in particular. And um, I think it just kind of, it, I think the bit that grinds me as well, as you say, like in a shopping centre, everybody's mauling on top of each other. And my parents own a barber shop, but they can't open, even though they could really control, they
Yeah,
can truly control who's in. It'd be, so say, for example, there's 5 staff, there'd be 5 customers in that room spaced out, no one else. And then it's once that customer's done, the clean up, the next one comes in. It could be very controlled. It's my parents' businesses, and I'm sure many other barbers, etc., are very clean, very well organized, and
yeah,
they're one of the safest places to be. And it was kind of like that as well with pubs. Not that they're kind of, talking about wanting them open straight away. I don't think that they should be the priority. But like you're talking about, when I went to a pub or when I went out for food, not once did I feel uneasy. The only time I've probably felt uneasy, to be honest with you, is in Asda or Tesco, because of how it's set up, where it's just there. You all go in, and you just get people who don't shop with the same kind of spatial awareness. I mean, we're shopping. Myself and my girlfriend were shopping earlier, and this guy just brushed past me, and I'm just thinking, well, hang on now. There's 2 meter rule in place. Not
yeah. I
that
mean,
it
most of the time,
bothers.
maybe now,
Yeah,
most people don't seem to care, do they, about the 2 meters at all. So
no. But ultimately, that's a place where it's open. It should be controlled to its proper degree, because you're putting people's lives at risk. That's what we're talking about. And it's just that hypocrisy that gets me. And you talk about as well these people in Westminster making decisions and rules, but yet you find most of them aren't following them themselves. I mean, you've had the guy Cummins go into the castle. You've had SNP members coming down to London. You've had so it's all this absolute nonsense. You've had people in the Senate caught drinking together, and it's just you have to ask yourself, well, why is it different for them? Why do they get to do this, and yet a lot of hardworking people or people who are lonely have to suffer, have to make the sacrifice, but not them. So it just doesn't feel like a collective effort.
yeah, I mean, I think you see that in a lot of places, don't you, where the people that set the rules don't seem to think that the rules have to apply to them because they're the people in the position of power. They're the
Mm,
people that, and that's actually something from my academy. I've always sort of tried to really be careful with that and think that I should do any way I expect like my students to act, anything I expect my students to do, then I should be doing that all the time as well. But I think a lot of the time from our sort of political class, we see the opposite of that. We see again and again quite
yeah.
clearly that it's do what I say, not as I do.
Mm. And it's difficult to relate to that, and then I think the massive thing that I've always spoke about is, after all this as well, the relationship, the long-term relationship people are going to have with, say, the government or the police. Like, it's going to be quite damaging, and the trust is definitely not there now, and I don't think it will be for some time. So I just think about the long-term effects that all these decisions that they make are going to have on people now. And I saw an article the other day, and it was NHS has started to realise that there's a mental health crisis going on, and it's, well, not that it's the NHS's fault, but it's pretty blatantly obvious that there is going to be a mental health crisis. I mean, there was one beforehand anyway, and the amount of chop and change, and so, the what people have been reduced to. Of course, there's going to be, because this government has done very little or next to nothing to try and help. I think the
Mhm.
only thing that's kind of indicated that is if you live on your own, you get to have a support bubble. But generally, you know, no, your grandparents don't get to see you 'cause there's two of them and there's, say three of you. You can't, even though you'd probably be quite responsible, you don't get to have that support. They don't get that support. But if they lived on their own, they would. So it's all that kind of nonsense then. But
Yeah, plus you've got, people who unfortunately don't live in very good environments, and they're trapped in that now.
definitely,
Whether that's kids with their parents or partners or whatever.
yeah, alcohol, drug abuse is going to probably be high, as we've seen alcohol sales are up an incredible
Yeah.
amount. And there's going to be great challenges that this country and many countries, well, every country is going to face with alcoholism and drug use and domestic violence and stuff like that. So I think it's just, how do they present it now? Does this government probably go out and really work hard afterwards to ensure that all these things are corrected? I don't think so. There's a massive hill to climb, and you know, just all the problems they've caused. I feel some of them are self-inflicted to a degree. Do they need, do all the things that they've put in place need to happen and happen for this long? No.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see how it plays out, won't it? To see
Yeah,
what the aftermath is. I think it will be we'll be seeing the effects for quite a while.
definitely. But I wanted to ask as well, what's it been like? I know you've been kind of doing like videos on Instagram to help people kind of train at home, but how's the response been to that? Like, especially with sort of the younger people in the academy as well. I mean, they've obviously enjoyed coming there, and they've lost
Yeah,
a
I
lot.
mean, I've been trying to put out some stuff. I'm not the best at doing it, but as far as like I've said to everybody a few times, I said before we stopped, I put some videos out about it where I just really don't think you can train jiu-jitsu on your own. I see people doing stuff with grappling dummies and stuff like that, but I just really just don't think it works. It would be trying to learn to cook with like non-organic material or something, just mixing
Yeah,
stones together. You're like, yeah, you can put it in the water and boil it for the right amount of time, but you're not going to have any idea whether it tastes good at the end of it because it's
yeah,
just, it's not the right material. The same with jiu-jitsu. How I don't understand how people expect to learn mechanics of an armbar on something that doesn't move like a human.
yeah,
Um, so it's kind of tricky, but I've just been, advising people just to keep fit. Improve any of your physical attributes is going to help doing jiu-jitsu. And I think in general, just do something to train to keep yourself in the habit of training, because, and I think this was something that lockdown will have a bad effect on some people, is it's very easy to get knocked out of a habit. I think it's very easy to miss a little bit and then you don't go back to it. We had a decent, sort of proportion of our students came back in between the two lockdowns, but it will be
yeah.
interesting to see now after this one, like what happens now for the eventual future once everything's back to normal. But I'm hopeful it should be okay and at least build up to the old levels quickly.
Yeah, I truly hope that people are in a situation where they can, first of all, go back to what whether it be jiu-jitsu, the gym, or their local football team, rugby team. I hope that they do and are able to get back into that for whatever reason. And I just feel like as well with sport on a whole, and I think you'll kind of feel like this as well, like with this long period off the regular and frequent training, that people don't get that kind of level of progression. Do you feel like it's going to have to kind of come back a little bit in terms of, so for example with you now, is it going to be like going back to basics to start off with? Was that how it was when you first went back after the
Um,
first lockdown, or
I think it depends on the person's experience. So if someone had just started before the lockdown, then I think that for them, basically, yeah, they're going to have to learn everything again. But for people that have been training a while, I think that they'll pick it up pretty quickly. Um, just the cardio is the main thing.
Yeah,
That's the thing you lose quickly. I think people will be struggling the first few weeks back, but my sort of thoughts on that is always just to jump back in, just go for it, just get tired,
yeah,
recover,
definitely.
and then go back the next time and get a little bit less tired, and then recover. Just keep doing that. I think it can be dangerous sometimes. I've seen sorry, some random thing going off. I think I saw something before where someone had said if you've had this amount of time off. Oh, what's it doing? Sorry. I think, you know, so this guy was saying, like, if you've been off for a while, when you come back, you should take it easy for like a amount of time. But I think that's just like a sort of quite a bad way of thinking. I think
Yeah,
just go back to it straight away. Obviously, you don't want to do anything reckless. Like, say you hadn't been doing any powerlifting for like months and months, go back and try and do try and beat your PB or something would be a bit silly. But you've still got to go back and just put hard work in straight away. There's no point in making it easy for yourself, because what's your sort of like point then where you step it up?
yeah,
You're going to give yourself excuses just to constantly keep training like below par then. So I think I'm just going to advise everyone to get back to it straight away and just go hard straight away, train a lot, get back to it.
yeah, definitely. I seen someone say that as well. I can't remember. Well, I won't name drop, but on about like if you know, wanting football games for people to be like only an hour long rather than 90 minutes. And it's just a bit like, well, why? Because you're only going to adapt to the hour then,
Yeah,
not that
exactly.
extra half an hour. Whereas, you'd much rather just kind of fall on your ass by the end of the game, but then you know damn well you're going to get eventually back to that, say, being able to play for 90 minutes or however long, the sport it is you take. Yeah, I really don't like the idea that you ease your way back into it. Exercise is meant to be a challenge, and that's purely it's prime soul of why it's good. Because if you're not truly pushing yourself, you give up. And I've been like that, until last year. I think you know during lockdown, because I was consistent and was able to try new things and challenge myself a bit more. I then realized I could, that I was, without kind of being like, oh, I don't want to train today. It was like, yeah, I want to train today. It was more motivation. It was more fuel to do it. It's more of a reason to do it. Where if I'd been in the gym in the past, and as you say, you're like, I'll leave that today. Whereas I did it really well the one time. I come back the next day and I'm feeling a little bit sore. I'll just be like, oh no, I'll leave it today, and then come back again the following day. Oh no, I'll leave it again today,
Yeah,
and it's like, oh,
exactly.
you pushing it back, and you just create that mindset then, and you never go back to it. And I'm someone who suffers with that. I really am. I can do it quite easily and switch it on, but thankfully I'm a bit more driven and understanding of what my body needs now. But yeah, definitely not for um, half-assing anything in terms of going back to things. And also it's that kind of um I was reading into it as well. Someone said it'll be that realization that you're back there as well. What a boost you'll get mentally from knowing that you're back on a football pitch or back in your gym and training to its full extent. It might hurt, but it's that realization afterwards that you're back doing it again. And hopefully we'll never go into a lockdown again after this one. Yeah, I would never.
You're right.
I'll never say definitely, because we never know with the people involved. But I think that there's so much now, like we're nearing the end, I believe, if you want to call it that, of this lockdown. And I feel like once people get back to what it is, I think people will feel really good.
Yeah, hopefully, I hope everyone's gonna be back. I can't wait I want jiu-jitsu competitions back. That's my number one thing.
Yeah, I mentioned, are you going to
Uh,
start competing again? Is that what you're feeling? You're going back to
uh,
competing?
like I always love competing, but I've just struggled a lot with injuries over the last few years. It's just been very difficult for me to train jiu-jitsu at a sort of high level consistently. Um, every time I do it, I get new injury, or like not a new injury, but I re-injure old injuries.
Yeah,
But it is something I would like to do again for sure. I've always been quite competitive. I did like team sports when I was a kid, and I was tended to get pretty much stuck in pretty much. I like to win a lot.
Yeah,
So it is something I would like to do. Thrill of the thrill of winning always feels good. But also I get kind of more out, honestly, of seeing my students competing. I love seeing the success that they get and them enjoying it. So I've been really missing that as well. So can't wait for the first competition when we get back.
yeah. That'll be great. I'm sure everybody in the gym's looking forward to that, really, just getting back in and competing. What's the format like there then? Does it just kind of follow like you do X amount of, is it just straight knockout, or is it you do X amount of, so like you'll have one match, and if you lose that, you're out straight away, or is it that you got another one
For
sort of?
jiu-jitsu competitions, yeah,
Yeah.
most of them are straight knockout.
Oh wow.
There's some of them that have a like a repechage. So once you've lost once, you fight for bronze. And there have occasionally been some competitions. I'm not sure. Maybe a while back there was some in the UK where they'd run leagues,
Hmm.
and they're normally recurring events. It's quite tough to run a league on a day if you've got a lot of competitors. But yeah, most competitions are single knockout, and then you get you get some that are double knockout.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Imagine just turning up and being out straight away. That'd be quite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people have sort of raised that as an issue over the years, but overall, I think obviously if you get like the double knockout system, it is good. I'm not going to say that's bad. I do like it, and especially for beginners, I think that's some of the best sort of levels of competition. Because if you're a white belt, like you say, you don't want to. You could travel quite far. You could travel 2, 3, 4 hours,
Hmm.
fight for a minute, and you're done. Um, but then I also think, on the other hand, like it's not that big a problem because when you go into a competition, your goal should be to win.
Yes, it's true.
If you're a competitor, obviously, like it's different when you're just starting out. But if you're advanced competitor, certainly in blue belt and up, once you've done enough competitions, once you've done a few competitions, your goal should be to win. So realistically, if you lose your first fight or you lose your last fight, then you didn't win. But then for competition point of view and from a hobbyist point, like it's an amateur sport.
Yeah.
People are paying to enter the competitions. I think there's a lot to be said for the double elimination method as well.
Yeah, I guess in a sense that a double limit, kind of talking on there is I think the single knockout would be great for the higher end of, competing, as you say, like blue belt onwards. And once you've had that sort of time in jiu-jitsu, you can kind of, as you say, go for it because you'll be familiar with it. And I guess if you've competed enough in double knockouts and you go to single, it won't be so sort of dissatisfying because it's maybe how it goes sometimes. But yeah, I do like that double knockout. That sounds really good. I feel like that's a great entry point because I remember doing it was a football tournament, but it was straight knockout, and you kind of turned up, eager to go, and we'd lost, and then it was literally it, and it was 10 o'clock in the day, and the whole thing was set for like 7 in the evening and stuff like that, and you just kind of remember feeling, well, don't feel like I've really gotten what I've wanted out of it, but then someone raised the point, well, then next time you come back, you know what you're in for, so you've got to want it a bit more and go for it a bit more, and I do like that. It's a good fuel to try when you go back into the gym to just get better, to ensure that you've done everything you can, because there's one thing I'm really not a fan of, and it's that what they're kind of instilling in sports is that everyone's a winner and participation trophies and stuff like that. Which, don't get me wrong, I think taking part is massive, and it's like that massive leap to getting into sport. But I feel like sport's going to lose its quality in athletes when everyone's coming off as a winner or everyone's the best. I feel like it's such a naff way of looking at it. I feel like winning and losing are one of the best lessons you can ever get in life.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and kind of desensitizing that will make a lot of the young people these days sort of entitled to winning and always being on the winning side. Whereas I feel like if you lose, there's so much more to gain from it. Whilst it does suck and it leaves a bit of a bitter taste early on, the long term sort of benefits to it is that you can evaluate and get better, and that's truly it. Like I like that fighters are not saying that yeah, losing's all that bad. Like I've seen people kind of break down from losing because it is tough, but I feel like when they look at a loss as something that they can use as a beneficial gain, that's massive. But find with a lot of the younger people now, they're not seeing losing as something they can gain from. It's purely, life or death. And I just wanted to get, with you as a coach, are you instilling? I'm assuming you're not instilling that at the gym.
Yeah, definitely not. No, because I mean that's something I've actually seen it at jiu-jitsu competitions sometimes where and it's nearly always with the kids competing is they lose and the coach will say to them afterwards, "Oh, don't worry, you did really well. You did really well." And I think sometimes that is true. Sometimes they did have a really good performance and they still lost, but sometimes they're telling them it, and I'm thinking they didn't really have a good performance.
Mm,
And I think there's too much of that trying to protect that kid and thinking like, "Oh, I don't want to upset them." And it's like the point you're making, like, what are you setting them up for then if you're not realistic with them and say, look, and there's a way of saying it. You don't want to wait
yeah.
like as they step off the mat, be like, what on earth are you doing? That was terrible. That's not the way to do it. But after they step off the mat, you just say to them, look, don't worry about it. You lost. We'll chat about it in training next time. And then in training, say to them, look, you obviously didn't have a good performance. Why do you think that was? Did anything happen with you? And then give them my feedback and say, look, there's this and that. And I think that's a much better way of doing it rather than I think sometimes that's something that people find difficult as a coach sometimes is to criticize their students because they feel like somehow that's going to weaken the relationship with you, because the student's not going to like me now because I've just told them
Mm,
they did this wrong or they did this badly. But that's what you're there for as a coach. You're
yeah.
there for, you're there to tell the people the things they're doing wrong, to tell the people, show them. And if they don't like that, then they're never really going to become a good
Oh,
student. And
yeah.
because, like you said, you can have a loss, you don't have to like it. But then you go back and you learn from it, you study it, you think, why did this happen? And I think especially for jiu-jitsu competition, there's so much because this ties back into the double elimination. Is so many people lose fights, especially less experienced, just because of adrenaline, just because of nerves.
Hmm.
Adrenaline can make you gas. You can be super, super fit, and adrenaline can make you gas in 1 minute. And then that can be nice then for them to have a little think about it, rest, and then fight the second time. And I've seen a lot of people in competitions putting in much better performances in their second fight. And there's obviously an element of the fact that they're going to be fighting someone else that's lost already. But sometimes you can just see in that person themselves that when they step on the mat, they just perform better for themselves. Again, they might lose both fights. They might lose the first fight and
Yeah.
the second fight, but you can still see an improvement. But yeah, I definitely see that sometimes where I think coaches can be a little bit too hesitant to tell, especially like children that they have students, to be honest with them and tell them that it wasn't a good performance. And I'm also I try and steer away from being super like trying to get the kids being ultra competitive, because as much as it's awesome, if a child wants to be competitive at jiu-jitsu and wants to become a world champion, that they need to compete at a young age. But then it's also you have to make that judgment and say, look, you're not winning the world championships at 6.
Yeah.
You're not going to have your best tournament result ever at 8 or 9. And if you do, then you've failed for sure.
Yeah.
So you don't need that pressure then. The kids, they should be trying to win for sure. They should be going out and trying to win. But at that younger age, it's much more about what you take from analyzing it and going back and what can you learn, how can you use that to improve yourself. So then I think anytime where coaches are trying to just sort of make their students feel happy after the fight, regardless of what's happened, is doing them a disservice.
Yeah. I think it just kind of does the sports as well, or wherever it is that you're doing a disservice, because it's not going to be the same, you know, it's not going to be at the same level as, if I was told, playing rugby, I was doing this thing and it was terrible, but I wasn't informed about it once, I'd keep doing it
Yeah,
thinking that
exactly.
it's great, and I'd never ever be told about it. So the quality of my, not only that, but the quality of rugby that would be played in and around me would be horrific. It wouldn't be as good as what it could be or should be. I think that criticism is one of those things. As you say, you don't want to absolutely belt into someone. That there are things, there are ways of going about it for sure. Um, but I don't. Yeah, I really don't feel like essentially lying to someone is is any better. As you say, talking about a relationship that, they might not, you know, look at me in the same way. I feel like that's ultimately up to you to make that, decision of how do you approach this person then. If you feel like going maybe a bit too hard is going to discourage them, just kind of engage with it on a slightly more conversational topic. Or if you feel like they're not going to get much out of a conversation, maybe I need to get into them a bit more. It's all about gauging the individual as well. And I feel like that then shows that you're truly making an effort to make that person a better competitor, athlete, and an overall person as well in their life. And that and people will recognize that. And as you say, if someone doesn't appreciate it, then they won't go far in whatever it is that they're doing. So I think, yeah,
Yeah, and like a part of that is part of that's sort of one of the hard parts of coaching is that
yeah,
you have to put it to the person in a way that's going to benefit them. It's some people, the best way of doing it might be just literally just to scream at them, just
yeah,
to tell them what's going on, especially say if it's like a MMA fight or something between rounds, it might be. But then other people aren't going to respond well to that.
yeah,
Other people need to have they're going to make a much better like strides from having a sort of technical breakdown. You need to do this instead of this,
mm,
and stuff like that. And that's a tough part of coaching, but I think that's something you need to do. And it's something that I had. It took a while for me to learn that as a coach, that you have to, again, it's something that you learn from competitions. You have to like learn to just pick the best way that you think of dealing with this, approach it the way you think, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. You'll get a bad response from your student, and then you won't do it like that again. You'll learn from
yeah,
that, and next time you'll apply it differently. But I think it can be very dangerous for a coach to just avoid that and not give good feedback. I've had lots of fighters after fight, especially the adults, where it's a lot easier to sit them down and say, look, that was a terrible performance. I think this happened. I think you were really tense before the fight. That's why you look gassed. But then say, but don't worry about it, because we can build on that. I can let you know how to train in classes to get better. I can give you these ideas of things, how you're going to approach the next competition differently. Again, that's something I've had to learn how to do. But I think that's a part from jiu-jitsu that you get from jiu-jitsu, or from any competitive sport. Like you say, you
yeah,
get it from rugby as well. That because I think that's a big part of losing, is it teaches people that, look, sometimes you do lose.
yeah,
Sometimes, and this is what I've told a lot of my students, or again and again, is sometimes you do everything to the absolute best of your ability and you still lose. And that's something you need to deal with in life. There's no guaranteed successes.
yeah,
And that covers over, I always use the analogy of, like, what if you go for a job interview and you're perfect for the job, you've got all the requirements you need, everything you've asked for, you go and you interview well, and then there's someone else that's just a bit better.
yeah,
And you have to accept, it teaches you to accept in life that, look, I haven't done anything wrong. I've lost. I've just got to keep going. I've got to try and make myself a bit better now.
yeah,
I didn't do wrong. I had nothing wrong. It just wasn't good enough. So I've got to try and push on. I've just got to try and be a little bit better. And again, that aspect of competition that you get from is that idea. And I noticed that this is a big difference that I've sort of seen between people who are involved in sports and those who are involved in competitive environments and those who aren't, is big lack of understanding of how high the level of something goes,
yeah,
where people kind of think, like, oh, this person's really, really, really good. Like a classic example of that is football. Everyone goes to school with a kid who's just exceptional footballer, better than everyone else in the school. But how many of those kids actually get any trials anywhere? And the ones that do, how many of them actually get into big football academies?
yeah,
And people, and some people would be amazed by that. They'd be like, how can this kid that scores like 4 goals every game we play, no one can get the ball off him? He went to a trial for a Division 1 club and they said no.
yeah,
I think because that's the level that's out there, that you can be a lot better than the average and you're still nowhere near a world champion. You're still nowhere near a sort of top tier level in that sport.
yeah, definitely. And I think that like it's such a good way to kind of fuel yourself as well. Like I always like
Yeah, for
believing
sure.
that there's someone that's better than me, because if I want to say, for example, if I when I was fighting, I looked at everybody as that they were better than me, and that I had to kind of go at it a bit more and ensure that I was working hard, because that way then I know that I'm going to view it as someone who's definitely willing to get tired and train well. Whereas I feel like if, as you say, people who aren't competitive, when something doesn't go their way or they get out nipped by somebody, say in a job interview, it's not a case of that they understand that they've done nothing wrong. It always kind of goes back to, oh, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And then it's like, oh, but that's not fair, sort of thing. And it's that understand of things aren't fair. It's not always going to be fair.
Yeah.
So you've got to really just kind of work hard to make sure that next time that you're in a position to make it unfair for somebody else, in that sense, be better so that someone else may kind of get better from you. Like that's one of the massive things about being at your academy. I felt like training MMA was that I'm not, I can't come in here acting like I'm the best or being cocky, because I know the people who are instructing me are the best ones, and I'll never go against their advice. Like I can't stand people who go to something and go against their coach or the teammate or the captain, etc., or someone that is just better than them, because they don't feel like their advice is, or is something to take on. I feel like if someone who's better than me and has been doing it twice as much as I have is telling me to do something that way, whether I think it's comfortable or not, I'm going to do it because it's worked for them, and I've got to at least try and make it work for me. And I really don't like that mentality as well. I feel like there are a few people who, as you know, have come into the gym, tried to do MMA. You've shown them how to do it. They act as though they know how to do it,
Yeah.
and they get uptight about it, and then they don't do the event. And I think that's a lot of what, when, as you've seen, loads of people turn up on that opening day to hear Pindy talk about the event, and it's amazing. Oh my gosh, yeah, this is easy. I'll be there. And then by week 2, or even say the second session of the first week,
After I've made them wrestle for
it's
2 minutes.
yeah, it's doubled down, and that's because they know, or they don't have it in them to get better and learn, or they feel sorry, like, oh, Rob's giving me this advice, but I think, what I did that one session down in this other gym before, and he told me this, or I did it like this, and it worked. And it's like, at the end of the day, you talking to someone who's had years upon years of training and experiencing, not only doing it but also being in it as well. I think that's a large part of jiu-jitsu. Is like, it's good to get, put someone in a submission, but you also got to know what it's like to be locked in one as well. Like, I think you do quite a good job of letting people understand what it feels like, how it should feel, and when you should tap. Because people do go a bit too hard. I felt that in the first one I did with you. I trained with someone. I think it was the second week, and we just started doing arm bars, and he absolutely wrenched my arm before I could even tap.
Yeah, I think that's part of the aspect of, because people are coming into
Yeah,
that sort of already amped up to be competitive. So it's not the same as coming and doing your first ever jiu-jitsu class where you're just coming to do jiu-jitsu. A lot of people turn up to train, and they haven't necessarily got, sorry, a bit of wind. They haven't necessarily got any sort of real desire to compete. So they come in and they're just trying to train, just trying to get better. But then obviously when you've got people that are coming in, they're going to fight in 8 weeks. You're going to have an amateur MMA fight in 8 weeks. That it's already giving them that like really competitive element. So there is that, and also that, because that's one of the hard parts of that, and that's why I did a lot of as you know, we did a lot of sort of like limited sparring, so not full sparring, is because you've got to do it because you're fighting in 8 weeks. But then you're trying to like make sure, like, you were there. How many times do I have to tell people to hold back with the strikes? When we're doing sparring, and I'm saying to them, look, we're not trying to knock each other out, and then 5 seconds later, someone's just thrown a giant haymaker.
And it's always the first 2 people that go up for it, isn't it? You literally see it and you see it. Yeah. And
but that is a tough thing, isn't it? I think it affects men more in general, but it's that sort of like physical competitiveness. And I think it's kind of can be hard sometimes, especially some people, if they find it difficult to accept that someone's better than them in a fight.
Yeah.
You mentioned one of my top jiu-jitsu students, Liu Long, and he used to work on the doors, and he had people that were trying to sort of prove themselves against him, and you just think,
why?
I don't know what these people are expecting, because they knocked someone out on the street once when they were a kid or something. They feel like they truly feel like they could beat someone that trains as a career. They do they fight professionally. It's their full-time job, and I just find that bizarre. It's a little bit the same sort of thing as lots of people think they can sing, especially when they're drunk. And it's
Yeah.
like,
I,
no, you need to have a better sort of like a more balanced look at yourself, a more balanced
yeah.
view of yourself. Again, it comes back to the ego thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that's the one thing as well that we like say, kind of rolling with you or Tom for that matter. Like you go up against you and you get absolutely floored. I feel like when you come out of that, you get that sense of as well that yeah, I'm not who I may have thought of being, like sort of thing. Like you get the realization that yeah, I'm not as tough, or I'm not, there's no matter how hard I try, these guys have got a technical ability that I don't have, I don't possess. Because I said to Tom, I said, we just would not want to like get on your bad side at all, or try anything silly on you, because it just wouldn't get me anywhere. And I feel like as you say, if people recognize Lou when he's on the door or know what he's about, and I feel like people sense that about bouncers anyway, because they're bouncers. They feel like, oh, he's a tough guy, so I need to prove myself to him. But more so if they know who he is and what he does. People who clearly, people who try it on people who are better than them just clearly have never had an ass whooping in their life, or have been in a position where they are powerless. But
Yeah,
I
I
think
think.
that I was just
Uh,
going to say, but I think it's one of the best things that you can ever experience is having no control over what is happening, because you get that sense of it. You're humble, but you
yeah,
have a greater respect towards other people as well.
yeah, and for sure, because I mean that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu. Was I just got absolutely wrecked, and I took away from that. I need to learn this, but I think where you see a lot of attitude from some people, general public now, is most people don't fight. Most people don't do anything like jiu-jitsu, boxing,
Mm,
Muay Thai. Yeah, most people have never done anything like that. So I think then that because of that, they're not used to violence. Obviously we live in a society these days that's not particularly violent.
mm,
Um, so most people can have like a comfortable upbringing. Maybe the most violent, especially in South Wales, the most violent thing they might have done is like play rugby when they were a kid, or had like a scrap in primary school or something.
yeah,
Um, so then it means that you do get the situation where a lot of people, especially if they're like a bigger than average person, they get by a lot by acting aggressive.
mm,
And a lot of people's reaction to that is to sort of stay away. I don't want to get involved with that. So that person then becomes emboldened, because when they're having
yeah,
that attitude and they're acting aggressive and they're throwing their weight around, they do get a bit what they want. People do stay out of their way. And I think it would be a good lesson for a lot, for every single person to have to go along to jiu-jitsu. But then I see the people that come along, and they obviously just tell themselves they probably just,
yeah,
they probably just go home, never talk to anyone about it, never tell anyone that they just got rolled up by a 60-kilo
yeah.
dude, and just ignore it. But I think for a lot of people, it can be a quite a humbling experience.
Yeah, definitely. That's the one thing that was the first thing I took from that, say, rolling with your Tom in the first ever MMA, and in the first event I did, was how little I truly know about fighting. And the main reason I signed up to do the MMA was because I've been watching UFC for about a good year and a half, and I was just like, oh yeah, yeah, no, what I can't, like, criticizing and kind of not appreciating the work that these people do and at the level that they do it. So I was like, I can't, I just remember sitting here thinking, and my friend who's a black belt in karate just said, just try and do one of those things, and you will appreciate what it is that an athlete and a fighter will go through. And I wasn't like, oh no, I could, I was like, yeah, okay, you're probably right. And I tried it, and it was the first thing I took from the first session was just how difficult it is. And I barely scratched the surface on it. And after the 8 weeks, I truly appreciated what a real fighter has to go through to just be at a good level. And I watch the UFC, or I watch any form of MMA now, and I appreciate it for what it is. And I can't stand like looking at comments that people put online about a fighter and saying, oh, he's crap and he's rubbish and stuff like that. It's like, it's
Why
just not.
why did Connor tap? That's why I saw someone
Yeah.
posting that.
What
Why did he tap? It wasn't around his neck. You think,
yeah.
okay, we'll
If
get
you ever,
Khabib.
yeah. We'll
We'll
go
let
and
him wrap
grab,
his arm
yeah.
around your chin, around your
Yes.
jaw. See how long you want to not tap for.
Yeah, exactly. It's that thing as well. It's that they have no notion of what it is, especially against Habib as well.
But you
Like,
get that everywhere, don't you? You get that.
yeah,
I've always said the classic one I see is, when people at football and they say, "Oh, why didn't he put that? I'd have smashed that away." And it's just like, mate, you'd have been off the pitch within 2 minutes of the game starting. You'd be
yeah,
so tired, you wouldn't have been anywhere near the play. And that's something that blows my mind. It's like me expecting to walk to some, like walk into a darts competition or something and think, oh, this can't be that hard. I've just got to throw these darts in the board.
yeah,
And it's like, I fully know that I could walk into a local pub and play people that play darts regularly, and every single one of them would beat me easily.
yeah,
But then that attitude doesn't seem to be the thing that a lot of people have got. A lot of people just seem to go through life where you just assume that you're good at stuff and then avoid it, as
yeah.
best you can. Just criticize other people for stuff you've never done. And criticism is fine. I think criticism is good, but it needs to be criticism of something that you've got an idea of.
Or just purely constructive. Like, I mean, I remember seeing someone just saying about, um, I can't remember. I think it was Ferguson after he lost to Gaethje, just saying he just didn't use his jab enough. Which you could probably say that's a fair criticism. It's just, Tony just didn't use his jab enough, and Justin had him. And then underneath it was, Tony could never. Tony's rubbish. Send him to Bellator, and it's like, honestly, like,
Yeah, and a
know,
comment like that, especially, isn't it? It's like,
yeah.
what do those people think the level of fighting is like in Bellator?
Yeah, Bellator has a pool depth that I think is really cool. I think that it's got sort of that like high end, like quality. I mean, it's got great quality within Bellator, and I think
Yeah,
people
but
who,
in the last few years, I think they've
yeah,
caught up to the UFC a lot. There was quite a long time when they first started, and they had kind of like a lot of promotions that have tried to compete against UFC, that they had this situation where they've got like one or two really good fighters in each division,
yeah,
and then not much else. And sometimes you get situations then where you look at title fights and you think this is a bit of a crazy fight to be a title fight.
yeah,
But I think they've done it. They've done well. They've picked up all the best fighters that they can when they can.
yeah,
And if you look now, they've got really strong divisions. They've got definitely not as much depth as the UFC, but they're they haven't been around as long. They
yeah,
obviously haven't got the finances that the UFC have, but I think now if you look, like, Bellator is clearly the number two MMA promotion. And I think a lot of the fighters now, if you look at the top level fighters, there's plenty of Bellator fighters that would be, they'd be within the championship sort of contention in UFC straight away. I think,
definitely. Mike
yeah,
Chandler's
exactly. Yeah,
one.
Mike Chandler's shown that recently. So
But like you've had guys like Brett Johns is one of them. He's gone to Bellator now from the
yeah,
UFC, but it's hardly like he was doing terrible in the UFC. Just think he fought Pedro Munoz and then
yeah.
somebody else.
His only two
Yeah,
losses are Pedro Munoz, who's obviously one of the top. Was he top three now?
yeah,
And that was a really tough fight. Brett was in that fight,
yeah,
fight until the end, and the other guy he lost to was Sterling, who
yeah. I mean,
I know it's obviously like a
yeah,
slightly contentious title win, but
he's
he
fighting for the
he's
title
yeah,
anyway. So
exactly. Just the fact that he's fighting for the title shows that
yeah,
he's. And I think I think Brett's one of the best bantamweight fighters out there. I hope he does really well in Bellator. He's a good friend of mine, so I'd like to
yeah,
see him
he's
do well.
top. I think he's got a very good future ahead of him. I think he looks good.
Really,
And I
he's got a
think
really good attitude. I think
yeah,
that's beyond anything else. I think that's Brett's sort of number one. His number one sort of main attribute that works in his favor is he's always had such a good attitude, grafts really really hard, just constantly puts the work in, and also you see in fights as well. You see that in those two fights, especially Munoz and Sterling,
hmm,
where he took some big shots, had some tough rounds in those fights,
yeah.
but you never see any glimpse of him looking like he's disheartened. You never look, he never looks like he's done. Like, he never looks like he thinks he can't win this fight. And I think that's the sort of thing that more than anything that's important to people, and not, again, not just in fights, but in life in general.
Just hanging in there even when it's tough. I mean the Pedro's fight as well. He kept coming forward, and
Yeah, constantly.
and Pedro's throwing some bombs as well. And he's just eating them up and just kept coming forward. And I just when people do that, it's a massive credit to, as you say, their attitude and the work they've put in, and you know, a lot of fans can admire that as well. I feel like there's a lot of the actual MMA community that see someone like Brett who fights hard always, and they just appreciate it win or lose. I mean, Cowboy was one of those people as well, but ultimately just kind of throwing it down, as you say, it's a fight. Like people just going down, using their technical abilities, and also on top of that, their characteristics is
Yeah.
is is great. And I was going to ask as well with Lou, because he's obviously in Bellator as well. I didn't he fight in Milan not so long ago.
Yeah. The knee bar victory.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, he's doing really well over there, and it's great to see him doing that. Of course, as you go over in corner with him as well. So what's that been like as well? Like obviously at Bellator.
Yeah, well, I wasn't at the last one because of COVID, so it didn't really work out because it could have been difficult if I had a quarantine and stuff like that. Because that was actually
Yeah,
back. That was back while there was no lockdown in place. Um, but yeah, it's always been good. Lou's a great fighter again. Like he's got really good prospects in Bellator. It's tough, it's tough at that his level. Um, there's so many different styles out there in MMA. It's really, really difficult to beat every single person you come
yeah,
against. But like Lou's skill set now is amazing. He's really good everywhere. Um, Looking forward to being able to be back in his corner at some point, but I'm not sure when that's going to be. But yeah, just it's always been fun. He's really coachable as well. He's a guy that in training he listens, in
mm,
fights he listens. Really coachable guy. So again, got lots of good attributes. Um, Trains again like Brett. He just grafts. Like
yeah,
Lou just gets up and goes to the gym. Like sometimes too much, I think. Sometimes because it doesn't matter if he's ill, injured. He just gets
yeah,
up and goes to the gym and works hard. He just sees it as just got to do it. Just
yeah,
he wants to do it. He's got to do it. Um, and I think, yeah, like when you said about the criticism that people make of fighters, jiu-jitsu, MMA, anything. If people realize, like people that have never done it any sport, actually this goes for any top level sport. If people realize the training that people go through, and the pain and the discomfort and the injuries, then I don't think anyone would criticize anybody.
no, absolutely not. I think I think the one thing that I always do, especially since kind of experiencing a slight fraction of MMA and training and what is required of you just to do, say, 6 minutes. Um, just respect to anybody at any level that goes in and competes and fights. Like it's draining as it is at the level I did it, so I can only imagine how difficult it is and how tough and how disciplined and how determined you have to be to be at that level. And I just kind of appreciated it a lot more. So, watching Lou as well, I'm always excited. Welsh guy. I always like to keep an eye out for the Welsh, for the Welsh fighters. There's a great pool of them. I mean, Mason Jones fought in the and I think he's gonna be top fighter, and he fought well. He just in his first fight in the UFC. I
Yeah,
think
you look at
Dana was really impressed with him. I felt,
Jack
and a lot
Shaw
of
as well.
people were. Yeah, Jack Shaw, definitely. There's a good pool of them at the moment, and I think it's really exciting for myself who watches a lot of MMA, but also gets to watch a lot of Welsh MMA as well, which is super cool. Um, but yeah, with Lou, I think was it Tom who mentioned? I don't know if Tom was messing about, but like Dylan Dennis. Did you see that? He like put a story saying Dylan
Yeah,
Dennis.
we've tagged him in a few things
Yeah,
before. But yeah, because I think he likes to run his mouth about wanting to fight
yeah,
John Jones and stuff, and you think,
yeah.
mate, I don't know. I think
Dude,
I think though, like I see sort of stuff like this, people that are just trying to promote themselves, and I
yeah,
don't, I like, I really, really doubt that Dylan Dennis truly believes that he would beat John Jones in a fight.
yes.
I think that's pushing it. Having confidence is one thing. Um,
Having a
like
brain.
I'm always confident. I'm always confident when I go and compete. If I went and fought, if I went and fought Gordon Ryan, when I stepped onto the mat, then I would be assuming I was going to win, and fighting
Mm,
like I'm going to win. But if I sit here logically and think about it,
yeah,
I wouldn't go out and put a bet on myself to beat him.
yes,
I go into the fight with the attitude that I'm going to win. But I don't really need to be calling out people like that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think Dylan Dennis would be a great fight for Lou. I think Dylan Dennis would be in big trouble against Lou.
definitely. Well, I mean, Dylan's had 2 fights in Bellator, and they've been against guys that had very little pro fights,
Yeah, they're
and I
very
just
well
yeah,
curated opponents for him for
yeah,
sure.
and it was a case of literally once Dylan got to the ground, that was it with the pair of them. But I feel like it's different with Lou, because Lou has a great ground game, and on top of that has a really good striking game as well. So I do
Yeah,
believe that Lou, because I was thinking about it, I was just like, that is a good fight. I think that's a great fight for Lou to not only kind of, it's a bit. I think it is a name in Bellator as much as he's only had 2 fights. It's Conor McGregor's friend. I think that's great. That'd be a great little, bump up in the division for Lou and in Bellator as well. So I think it would be a great fight. And I wasn't sure if it was just Tom taking a mick, or is it genuinely something that could happen.
yeah, but I mean, I think and I think that is part of MMA, isn't it? And
Yeah.
like I said, that's why Dylan Dennis throws out all these crazy names that he wants to fight. Is that it's partly based on your ability and your record.
Hmm.
And it's the way things are. It's entertainment. It has to make money, so it is also partly based on uh, how much you can set things up, how much you can sell a fight. Look at Conor McGregor's rise.
Yes.
Obviously the most important thing to him getting up to the top level, getting up to the title, was his ability. But how did he make himself known? By running his mouth.
Mouth. Yeah.
And there's part of that, isn't it? Because people want exciting fights. Like I don't really. I'm not a big fan of the stuff that McGregor says and stuff and the way he acts, but
Yeah.
it does make fights exciting. Yeah, I remember way back in the day, I remember Tito Ortiz saying he said he doesn't care whether people are fighting to see him win or to see him lose, as long as they're paying to see him fight.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of MMA. And if we can tag Lee and Dylan Dennis in a few posts and get him that fight, I think that would be a good win for him. It'd be a nice name, because like you say,
Yeah.
even though he hasn't exactly got a great MMA record, he is known. He is a name that people know.
Yeah.
And it would
And he
look good.
does have good jiu-jitsu, of course. Like, I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
I
great
think
grappler, but
yeah, because some people have asked me about this before, and I've said I think Lee would beat him. And then people sort of think, because I'm saying that I'm saying that Dylan's is like rubbish,
yeah,
but
it's not that. It's just
clearly a good grappler.
yeah,
But I think against Lee, when there's strikes involved as well, I can tell you now, I wouldn't want to do just a grappling fight with strikes against Lou. I can tell you that for
yeah,
sure. And MMA is something different again, because you've got to get past the punches and the kicks before you can even clinch them to try and take them down. And then when you take them down, they can hit you doing that as well. And Lou is not easy to take down. So, but I think realistically, he just wants any good fights, either big
yeah.
name or high level.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's come in and done really well. So I think definitely got to just kind of get yourself out there, and I think the Danis one suits him, because there is no Danis has not indicated any level of striking. I mean, the first one he just kind of circled round and had high hands, and the guy was getting 1 or 2 shots on him, and then he just had we just timed the takedown really well and went from there. But I feel like Lou is he's quite a big guy for the division as well.
Yeah, I don't think he'd beat Lou on the ground anyway. I
No.
don't think he'd be able to take him down and tap him. I don't think he'd be able to hold him down. I don't think he'd be able to stay on top of him.
Hmm.
I think if Lou got on top of him, he could do some serious damage quickly.
Yeah, but how cool would that be as well for you? If you were in his corner and across his coach Kavanagh and those boys from that gym. I think that'd be quite a pretty cool experience as well. Obviously the guys they've had in the gym as well. Obvious one is Conor McGregor, but Artem Lobov and Gunnar Nelson as well. I think that might be a pretty cool experience for you as well, personally, being along the other side of some well-known coaches who've had some great success.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be a good experience to go there beat someone from that team for sure.
It's fantastic. I love MMA, and I think that like having that experience in the gym with you and stuff has been fantastic as well. And I've appreciated it a lot more. And I think he's kind of coming back to McGregor as well. Before I did all of that, I was very much like McGregor heavy, and I am still his fan, but I do appreciate him a lot more, and I enjoyed him more as he was with the last two fights with Cowboy and Dustin. Like, obviously, kind of mellowed down a little bit. He's done what he's kind of needed to do, and he's just kind of
I mean, he's a great fighter, isn't he? I think it's this weird thing that where you get someone like that, and actually, I mentioned earlier, Gordon Ryan is similar to this, where because they are people that run their mouths, they like to cause a little bit of controversy. They get a lot of talk around them.
hmm,
That it then leads some people to sort of act as if they're not good.
yeah,
As if like, oh, I've seen people say Connor like, oh, you only got to this level because of running your mouth, and like, no, he beat all
no,
the fighters as well.
you have to go through a division still to get to where he
Yeah,
was, and
I think anyone that does that and acts, like these people aren't good fighters, they're sort of like biasing themselves against them
yeah,
because of the way they act. And you think, look, you got to hand it to these guys. They're exceptionally good. Conor McGregor's exceptionally good,
yes,
like one of the greatest lightweights of all time for sure. To sort of like not accept that because you don't like the way he
well,
acts
yeah,
is really silly.
it's daft, yeah, but it's also like how it shows how good Dustin is as well. Like he's, I mean, he had Habib in a submission, in their bout. I really think Dustin Poirier is I think he's a better fighter than Connor, and I said that before the fight. Obviously, Connor was the immediate favorite with obviously their first bout, and obviously he's the bigger name and stuff. But I did genuinely also have a feeling that Dustin was going to win because he's been quietly going about it. But he's been fighting some top guys,
I
and
mean,
I've seen
he's a
him up.
he's a guy you can see he's massively improved over his career. That
Yeah,
you can see he's definitely a guy that goes away from every single fight and analyzes his own
yeah,
performance and and works out what he needs to do, which areas he needs to improve. I think it's been he's had some losses in his career. He lost to
yeah.
top level guys, but he's come back. From every single loss he's had, he's come back and looked like a much better fighter every single time.
Well, it's like the thing as well. He fought Habib and lost, and I feel like in that division, if you fight Habib once, he's not really someone you can kind of go back to for a rematch. But if
I
Habib
mean,
does
Khabib is
come
just
back,
exceptional, isn't he? He's just
yeah.
like a once in a lifetime style, isn't he? He's just so far ahead of everybody else.
But in terms of other than the Ala Quinta, really, I think Dustin, if you want to say Quinta fought well, I just think with that week that Habib had having Holloway, it was meant to fight Ferguson, and Ferguson dropped out, then Holloway, and then Holloway dropped out, and then they got that guy. I could imagine that there were a lot of chop and change to Habib's week and stuff, and not knowing whether you're going to fight. I'd imagine there would be some mental challenges that come with that. But since
Yeah,
then,
and
he's kind of
realistically, in it, Ale Quinta, he just got back up to his feet a lot.
yeah,
He didn't really like pressure Khabib that much.
no. But Dustin, I thought fought really well against, and to be fair, I thought Justin started really well against Habib, but Habib just got that ability to just switch it on and then it's done. And that was the crazy thing as well with the Gaethje one. It was just there. It was just bang, takedown, submission, over. And literally, I remember saying, "Oh wow, fair play to Justin. He's doing everything he should." But Habib's just got that switch. You can just switch it on and use his power and his technical ability, just pop it on. And I feel like with Dustin coming out of that fight, you feel like looking at Dustin's age and what he's done in his career, he might not get another title fight. It might just kind of be a top five guy who might sort of go against the lower ranked guys and maybe they pass it on to them, like the younger guys coming up. But he stayed at that level and has gotten so much better. And I feel like he could even, I know they're probably going to do the trilogy with Conor, but if there was a talk for Dustin to get a rematch with Habib, I wouldn't be so much, I wouldn't be against it. I feel like it'd be quite well earned in all honesty. Um,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think unfortunately there's just those times sometimes out there that there's really good fighters out there that are never going to be champion.
hmm,
Again, I guess in all sports, you're going to have really good teams that never win a title. You're going to have really good competitors that never win. It goes back to what I was saying about how it's so difficult to get to the top, and I guess especially if
yeah,
you just happen to be you're trying to get to the top when Khabib's already up there. You
the
think like
challenge, yeah.
just
And
a just a tough time, just a tough time to be the second
yeah,
best kind of thing, isn't it? If you're second
exactly.
best by a long way sometimes.
Because I guess it's a case of no matter how hard you train or get better, Habib is always going to be is always going to be there, and it's just crazy how kind of simple the game plan is, like in terms of but it's not simple, but like he's going to take you down, he's going to use your wrestling. I feel like when you see that a lot, people can style up against it, and I guess it doesn't matter how much you try to go against Khabib in any way, whether it is to kind of match him or you try to go on your back or just try and keep it up on your feet, he'll just find a way, and it's just crazy to see that consistency through his career, through his MMA career, and just stay undefeated. And like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky. It's tricky to fight against him because uh, I think like there would be the temptation. I've seen some fighters say, or I've seen like not fighters, but I've seen people again comment online and they're like, "Oh, you just be training not to get taken down. Train sprawl, train sprawl, train sprawl." You can't spend all of your time training for the fight just trying to train to stop the other person doing what they're going to try and do,
yeah, you can still
because
box. You can still
because
box.
yeah, like you what you need to be doing is you have to beat them, so you can't
Mm,
just think I'll just defend. That's not a way to win a fight. But then the problem is with Khabib is it's just so difficult to stop him from doing. You'd have to
mm,
strike in the fight. You have to stop them from doing what they want to
yeah,
do, and it's just so difficult. It's proven so difficult for everybody because he's got great cardio. He's unrelenting. He just constantly always comes forward
yeah,
because people are so scared of being taken down by him. Allows him, like, look at the punch he landed on Connor, the massive overhand right.
yeah.
And I've seen people then after that, and they were like, "Oh, how would Khabib do in boxing?" You're like, well, look, he wouldn't land that punch on any
It's a
single. You
boxer.
wouldn't land that punch on a basic level amateur
Yeah,
boxer unless they're scared about getting double legged.
yeah,
Um, and I think well, it did, didn't it? It proved impossible for anyone to stop it in MMA. And then I think his grappling style is the best MMA grappling style around. Um, he doesn't throw like the really little shots on the floor, but then he's also not just looking for bombs. He's just looking if he can make nice contact with the face while he's trying to like tie your legs up, he'll do it. Bang,
yeah,
pop you in the face, pop you in the face. All the while he gets the knee control, and then once he can get one arm up around the hip, he's got the hip control, pop you in the face again, and it's just like
yeah,
it's just like an unrelenting tide like that. You just can't hold it back. No one's proven being able to do it. I actually think Connor did pretty well against him.
yeah,
I think a lot of people like again, he runs his mouth, doesn't he? So when he loses, everybody wants to attack
yeah,
him. But I think a lot of people overlook that. He did pretty well. He got back up.
yeah,
Yeah, especially when you look at what happened against Gaethje. Like when Khabib took him down the first time, Gaethje looked at the clock, thought he was safe, and nearly got subbed in 20 seconds.
yeah. It's crazy how he can just turn it on. But like you going back to Connor as well, like even though Connor did really well against the Khabib's grappling, the one thing that they did say, his coaches, that they were too defensive in their approach in the camp, and that's obviously because you know who you're up against.
Yeah,
So as you say, you're spot on with the people. How would Habib fare in boxing? Who would want to see? First of all, who would want to see? I wouldn't want to see that.
I hate
He's
all this stuff. I hate like that Conor Mayweather stuff. I just crossover stuff like that. I
yeah.
just don't. I don't get it
Like
because
it's happened. It happened. It made him a lot of money, and I
yeah,
understand that.
yeah,
But
I
it
understand
should
why it
never be.
happened.
It should never happen again. Like it just stay. It's proven. Although I thought Connor did quite well, it just still goes to show that if Floyd came and stepped over into the octagon, it would be exactly the same.
Yeah,
He'd
exactly.
lose.
Like
Yeah,
unless you get a massive disparity in ability, like
yeah,
if you put Conor in against some total bum, I'm sure in boxing, I'm sure he'd be able to beat them.
yeah.
Um, but it's just not interesting, is it? It's
No.
just
Well, it's like all that YouTube stuff with Jake
yeah. I was
Paul.
gonna
It
say
just
it's just
grinded me, and the worst thing as well is the professional fighters stooping to it. It's like, what are you doing?
money
Yeah,
though, innit?
yeah. I get it. Like, who's it? Cal Froch is coming out saying that he'd love it, and it's like, honestly,
I don't think
no.
there's anyone that's on YouTube that's going to beat Carl Froch in a fight
Yeah,
night.
yeah, no,
I don't think that's going to go well for
absolutely
them.
not. But like, I mean, Jake Paul's fighting Ben Askren in a boxing match. First
Yeah,
of all, Ben
so
Askren it was a very good MMA fighter, but it was purely grappling. The guy has no striking. He has next to nothing striking in terms of boxing technique. it's not there. So if Jake wins this,
Oh, he won't. Askren will wreck him, I reckon.
oh, I think so. But even then, if Jake wins this, it's still on top of a wrestling fighter, not a boxer. So it's like, where do you want to put, where do you want to put it? Because if you're going to say that you respect boxing and you want to be a genuine, fighter, you have to fight genuine fighters. You can't pull a wrestler from MMA and say this is genuine and it's legitimate, because it's not. I mean, it's like, like footballers playing rugby players in a crossover. It just wouldn't. It just doesn't make sense. Or you're pulling.
Yeah, I think I remember a long time ago there was a series they did, rugby league against rugby union,
Yeah,
and unsurprisingly the rugby union team won the rugby union game,
yeah.
and the league team won the league game. You know, is that a surprise?
No, I feel like people kind of hold on to that miracle that what if, and I think that it is nice to think like that sometimes, but you also just got to be realistic and be like, yeah, well, it's not going to happen. It's going to be something very slim, like the CM Punk thing in UFC. Oh,
Yeah,
you might. No, it's just not going to. It's whether he's not had many pro
That's
fights.
Brock's fault though, isn't
Yeah, yeah. But Brock did well though. But that's
Yeah,
the
he
thing.
was a
Brock had
legitimate
wrestling.
wrestler, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brock had wrestling background at a high level as well at a great university, and was the heavyweight champion. Whereas CM Punk had zero martial art background, and it's just like, well, you're taking a biscuit there. And the fact that he got a second fight as well, it
Yeah, I
baffles me.
think that, I mean, like, it goes back to what I was saying before with Dylan Dennis and Lou, and there's obviously that element of entertainment. But I'd rather just take a properly competitive fight over an
Yeah,
entertaining fight. You know, obviously the dream is the entertaining competitive fight, something like,
yeah,
you want the fight like Conor and Khabib. That's the dream fight, isn't it? Where
mm,
the build up to it is entertaining, or like Conor against Nate Diaz, where the build
yeah.
up is entertaining and the fight's good and it's competitive.
Hmm.
What you don't want is, again, just this nonsense of like YouTube celebrities fighting against boxers or whatever,
Yeah.
or fighting each other, and then you just get, I didn't even watch that. What was that guy's name? Paul. I saw like a tiny little clip of it, and you just
Well,
think it's
Jake
just
Paul, yeah.
bad level boxing. Who wants to
Yeah.
watch that?
Well, he knocked out like a retired basketball player as
That was
well.
it. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it.
Well, and he's been boasting about it. It's like, you're boasting about knocking out a basketball player. Who
Yeah, it's kind
who
of like a step. It's like a step
yeah,
up from a fight that you might see if you go out to town at night.
yeah. Who also showed his inexperience by the way that you knocked him out. He just kind of went at you with no real guard and no real technique. He just went at you and he opened up and you caught him, and that's that. And
I think that's the thing as well, especially before you've done it. You've done 8 weeks training and had a fight. How much worse do you feel in the actual fight than in training at that point?
exactly.
So it's like these people, I'm sure, when they do pads and that, they look all right. If they've done pads with a good cut, pad man, then they're going to look okay. If they've had good training, their footwork's good, they're going to look good. And then once it goes into a fight, it's totally different, because there's a person trying to actually knock you out in the ring with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like that for me. I remember the first fight I did. I remembered it differently to how I viewed it. I thought my striking was okay, and then I looked at it and it was horrific, and I was like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! I thought I did okay. Like, the grappling was all right for what it was, but like I genuinely convinced myself before any footage came out or someone showed me a video of me fighting that I was striking at a very good level, and then I looked at it and I was like, that's horrific. That is genuinely horrific.
And that's the thing, and that's what you get like with these YouTube fights and stuff. It's just, I don't get it.
They
I
got
don't
they got
understand why
too
so many people are into it.
yeah. It's young people on YouTube who like it and thrive off it, and it's just the way that they are online with social media and stuff. And I don't want to understand it. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing in that now these days, where you've got these YouTube celebrities and they've got big followings, and what they put forward as like the reality of things is, it's not really it's not really a normal everyday life, is it?
It's horrific, and the people that they get around them, the absolute yes men. They're not your friends. People around you telling you that you are a great boxer because you knocked out some retired basketball guy, and they're going to turn around and be like, "Oh, listen, keep level headed," because it means they're out the circle then, and it means that they're
Yeah,
not getting
exactly.
any attention or any
You only
wealth.
get to hang around with them if you're
Yeah,
constantly telling them how amazing they are and backing them up. And
and it's not realistic, and I don't get how, I get young people maybe aren't understanding it, that that's how life, that's not real life, and that's not what a lot of people who watch them are going to experience. They're not going to, go on and make great money off entertaining people, and then, do extraordinary things or stupid things, and have people around them that big them up and they get all the drama around them. That's not how their life's going to be. And when they, God forbid, when they do realize that they don't have a meltdown, and that they just understand that that's just not normal life. Because I know, obviously, with social media in particular, there's this huge issue of how you've got to be and how you've got to look and perceive yourself, and it's just absolute arse. I hate it. I can't stand it. I,
I mean,
like,
the one I find the funniest as well, obviously, especially because we've been involved in fighting, and that is, like how many of these people are social media stars and they try to act really tough,
yes,
and it just always comes across as pathetic to me, because you watch, except obviously the lead up to fights can be a bit different and stuff, or when they're face to face, it can be different. But you watch, media from MMA fighters in training and stuff, and it's like a totally different vibe.
yeah,
When you're talking about somebody who literally could walk into a group of 20 people and kill them all barehanded,
yeah,
and they're the chilled out person, and then you've got a guy who, okay, they're successful, these people that like they've got Lamborghinis and stuff because they've got 10 million subscribers on YouTube or whatever, but then they get this success and they get this fame, and now they act tough and as if they're like, uh
invincible.
someone to be scared of or something for this, and you're like, you've just been successful on YouTube and made money. It doesn't
Well,
make you into a badass. It's
no. Well, it's like Jake Paul, after Connor lost to Dustin. He laughed at him as though, like,
yeah, I
he
mean,
was well in the mix of, of having a fight with Connor. And you can see as well when he does the video asking to fight Connor, he has to go to a level of being really personal and horrible, just so because he knows that that might be his only way of getting
yeah,
a
it's the only
reaction
way
out
you
of
get that
Connor,
fight now.
and
Yeah,
that's lame.
yeah,
He knows damn well Connor's not going to look at him for the money because Connor's got money. He knows it's not going to be based on his ability because Connor's quadruple the fighter that he is. So what have I got to do? I've got to insult his wife. I've got to insult himself, his country. Got to literally try and hit home just to get some attention, and it didn't work out.
and that kind of goes back to something we were talking about right at the start, wasn't it? Where it's much easier to do that. It's much easier to attack Connor, and say that stuff than it is. Realistically, he knows that he's never ever ever going to be able to build himself up to the level of fighter that would actually be able to have a fight like that for
Yeah,
real. He's never going to get to the point where he'd be an actual title contender at UFC. So he's got to take the easy option of just trying to like disparage Connor.
yeah,
And obviously, Connor's done that with other fighters as well. But he had the skills. It's a little bit different where you're legitimately in the title shot, or you're
yeah.
in the picture for these fights. Plus, you're being
We're also
a bit of a jerk. But just doing that, just to me, it just makes you look like a
But
clown.
also, the massive thing with Connor is when he was going through that phase of, like, you're talking about that, say, a year or two ago with Habib, and the incident where he punched the old man. He had an absolute meltdown, and that is purely because of his wealth. It is because of his wealth and his ego and the people he had around him. So it's very similar to
And
what
cocaine.
Jake, yeah, exactly, and that's what Jake Paul and people like that are in. They're in that same bubble.
Yeah.
And Connor's come out of it now and realised that he's got two kids, he's got a very good life, and the way he was with Dustin and the way he was with Cowboy, I personally enjoyed that a lot more. I don't know if it's because I've grown up a bit more and I kind of appreciate and love seeing respect between two fighters now, but ultimately he probably gets a lot more out of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like a bit of both. I do. I think a bit of the banter is good.
Yeah,
Um, but I think, yeah, if when it gets to the point where you're throwing metal barriers through bus windows and stuff.
You gotta
Throwing
change it up a little bit.
throwing drinks cans at each other at conferences and stuff. I think that's the bit that's a little bit over the top to me.
Yeah.
Because stuff like that, I think, why do they need to do that? They're going to fight each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
No,
bit that
right.
gets me. Like when they're on the stage together and they have to like he threw a kick at Habib through the whole scuffle, and it's like, honestly, well, why, one, you were nowhere near hitting him, so why even do it? But two, you're literally gonna fight him tomorrow. Try and do it then.
Yeah, I always think that stuff looks a little bit
And
silly,
then and
being
then the
dragged apart.
Yeah. And then the thing as well is that after the fight, Habib won, and he does chirp at Dylan, but Dylan doesn't kind of take it well, and Dylan calls him out, and it's just like, honestly, there's no need for that as well. Like, you got to take that. You're in the corner. I don't think. I think there's a video online of Coach Kavanagh like backstage, literally giving Dylan Dennis a bollocking. Like, you
Mhm.
just don't do that. And he put and the worst thing is he put Connor in trouble as well then, because Connor was in the cage, and when it was all kicking off, guys went after Connor then,
Yeah,
you
that was a
know.
little bit crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nuts. It was ridiculous.
I always kind of enjoy things like that, a bit of
Yeah, it was
chaos.
crazy. I mean, Khabib flying out of the cage is crazy. I remember watching it going, "Holy!" But
Yeah,
like, when you kind of like dissect it all, it goes back to McGregor's corner then, and then the people that they are at that time, where they're all like, there's clearly a lot of wealth around them, as you say, drugs and a lot of influence, negative influence around them, that they let get to them. So even when a situation that you could be humbled by, they don't do that. They take it as, well, we need to go on the attack again, and ultimately more punishment and more bad press, which I don't think Connor really needed at that time. And then,
yeah. It's weird as well because I find it quite weird that there was seemed to be a lot more fuss from some people about that than there was like the throwing the barricade through the bus window.
yeah,
But I just think, at the end of a fight, their guys are there to fight, so they're already in fight mode, and then in their corner, there's always people who are fighters, whether it's like John Kavanagh, who's a coach, he's still a fighter.
yeah,
So there's fighters there, and then it's emotionally charged. So I think you're always going to get incidents like that. There's been incidents before, and
yeah,
I can like stuff like that to me when it's around fights. I've seen it at jiu-jitsu competitions. I've seen people almost come into blows at jiu-jitsu competitions, and again, some people get super freaked out about it, and it's like, well, look, we're here fighting anyway.
yeah,
It's to be expected. You're already trying to be competitive and trying to be aggressive and trying to attack people. It's just a part. It's just a part of what we do. So I'm never really that down on stuff like that. It was, obviously it was a little bit crazy, but
it's
I don't
just,
like the stuff. I don't like the stuff that's outside that because
yeah,
I think
the bus incident is just,
yeah, stuff like
yeah,
that. And when people almost come to blows at press conferences and stuff, and you think you don't really need to be in that mode. If you're at a press
no,
conference a week before you're fighting, you don't need
just
to
enjoy
be.
it.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing that gets me with the bus incident. He talks about it. It was because he had a gripe with Habib, but he didn't like the fact that Habib had cornered his teammate with his group of friends. So what did he do? He flew a group of friends over and had it out with Habib, but in front of loads of people who weren't involved in that situation. That's the bit that bothers me. It'd be
yeah,
one thing if Connor flew out on his own, went on the bus and grabbed Habib. That bit you can kind of understand a bit more. But to genuinely throw stuff through a fucking bus window and then go after people who affect, in particular, Rose Namajunas as well. She was pretty damaged by it mentally and physically as well, because she wasn't happy. And is it her husband as well, Pat Barry?
yeah,
Yeah, he was pretty shaken up by it all as well, and that's when it becomes a bit much. But yeah, a lot of people seem to have more of a gripe with the fact that Habib jumped out the cage and flew like an eagle over to Dylan Dennis. But yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's just he's just that's the thing, isn't it? He's in a fight mode at that point.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
with stuff like that,
And
I think
and the things
it
that they
happens.
commented on Habib and his family as well,
Yeah, and
and
nothing bad
evident.
happened today. It was
No,
no one got injured or anything.
just just a few blows, but there we are. Well, Rob, I mean, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a good chat. I really enjoyed talking about MMA and a bit about COVID and a bit about your gym as well. It's been
No
really
problem,
nice.
man.
Yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I haven't uploaded in a while, but I'm going to try and do a bit more. Just kind of took a little break just to assess everything. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Rob, thank you very much.
No worries, mate. Thanks a lot.